On a record. All right, welcome everybody on our Zoom platform and Facebook Live. We're here today. It's Lance Luke and Martin Pea. And this is the first time in our Ask Building Expert webinar series that we're going to be talking about a building that's outside of Hawaii and outside of the United States. We did a webinar on the Florida building collapse that was outside of Hawaii. But today's topic is we're going to London, and I see and welcome those of you who are tuning in that are from the UK and other countries. I know it's about 11 hours ahead of our time here in Hawaii. So we're looking at probably sometime at night. I don't know. I'm trying to focus on too many things right now, but I know it's nighttime where you are. So thanks for tuning in. Our topic today is the Grenfell Tower fire, the real story. And this fire was the largest high-rise fire in London. It occurred in 2017, and it took years and years to investigate everything. And I was supposed to fly up to London in 2020, but then the pandemic hit and I couldn't fly. And then after that, it was kind of too late in the game. So if you look at this picture that I have on the screen, everything is just black and burnt. The only green thing is the trees that are like a block away or so when they took the photo. But let's get down to the nitty gritty. I'm going to talk about causes of fire, the problems with the design, and things like that. Also, if you guys have any questions, use the chat or Q&A feature on our Zoom platform, or if you're on Facebook Live, just post your questions or comments on Facebook, and hopefully we'll be able to see it, read it, and respond. So we're open to conversation. So let's talk about the building construction history. The building plans were approved in 1970. So prior to that, the architects were designing the building, and construction started in 1972, and it took a couple of years. So construction period was in the years 1972 to 1974. And the building was 24 stories high, 230 feet. And there were this was an apartment complex building, so it was not a condominium. And there was 129 units. And in London, they call units flats. So apartment units were called flats rather than an apartment unit or an apartment. Now, the big problem, the building was designed with one single interior stairway only. Most high-rise buildings, in fact, all of the high-rise buildings built in the United States, there's actually two fire exits for emergency, one on opposite sides of the building. But in the Grenfell Tower, it was designed with one interior stairs. And the other big problem, the emergency evacuation in the event of a fire, the rule for the building was to stay put, or shelter in place policy. And that proved to be incorrect policy because people couldn't leave the building. Okay, so um, that was another mistake. So if you look at the copy of the plans that I put up, there's a schematic drawing of different sides of the building, and then I have a floor plan that says typical residential floor in Grenfell Tower, and you have these units, like a 2-bedroom, then a 1-bedroom, and then you have a stairway. So in the building, in the core of the building, right in the middle, you have 2 elevators, and then you have your interior stairway. And this is proven to be the worst architectural design possible in the event of a fire or an emergency. So can you imagine, you have 24 stories, 129 units, you have hundreds of people living in the building, and in the event of a fire, they have to all go to one stairway to evacuate, or one bank of elevators in the central core. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. Not only that, everyone was trained that if there was ever a fire, you don't leave the building. You lock your door and you stay in place and you wait until you're rescued. The problem is that the fire spread so quickly, people were trapped inside their units. They couldn't leave, and it just was a major disaster. So a heads up to architects and people who are living in either condos or apartment buildings. If the building only has one interior staircase for exit, then I wouldn't live in that building. It's too dangerous. Okay. Now I'm talking about a high-rise building. If it's a 1, 2, or 3-story building, then it's not that critical. But high-rise buildings are a different animal. I work with high-rise buildings all the time, and it's critical that you have emergency exits. So let's talk about the building construction history. Now, the building was constructed, as I mentioned, in 1972 to 1974. Now, there was talk about a renovation, because what happened was the residents were getting too hot in the building. So the idea came up for renovation, and the entire building was renovated in 2015 to 2016, where they installed new windows, a new heating system, and new aluminum composite cladding system. And the cladding system is like a shade that goes over the outside of the building, and it was designed actually to prevent a lot of heat from the sun going into the unit. So when you have a shade and you're blocking the UV rays and the heat, then your air conditioning actually works better, and the interior of your apartment is cooler. So that was the idea. But the new aluminum composite cladding system was proven to actually accelerate the fire, and I'll explain more about that. So London high-rise buildings, there was actually a moratorium to build high-rise buildings, I guess because the area didn't want to look like a huge city. But because of the demand, the moratorium was lifted in the 60s. Okay, so for about 10 years, there were no high-rise buildings in London, and the Grenfell Tower happened to be one of the first ones after the moratorium was lifted. Now, before I talk about the cladding, I wanted to give you the events that transpired in June of 2017, where this is kind of depressing, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because the information will help. 72 people died in this fire, and more people actually got injured. So I have some time-lapse photos, but there was a photo of the Grenfell Tower in May of 2017, and I'm not sure who took that, but uh, 1 month before the fire happened, the building looked pretty nice, right? And then on June 14th, a tragedy occurred, and at 4 o'clock BST, which is a British summertime. So, like in Hawaii, you have HST, Hawaiian Standard Time. So this is the Britain equivalent of that time zone. So at 4 o'clock, you can see the building is like all basically in flames, right? And about an hour later, an hour and a half later, there's a lot of smoke, but the fire department got there. And then about 2 hours later, you see the black gray smoke, and that's evidence that the fire is getting put out. So you don't see any flame or anything. But these photos, I should have warned you earlier about the photos, because they're kind of shocking, and they're shocking to me, and I know they're shocking to other people as well. But this is the events that transpired. So can you imagine a whole high-rise building that's under fire, in a blaze, in a matter of half an hour to an hour? It's like very scary, and people are inside that building. They can't get out. There's no way for them to escape, because the rule was to shelter in place. Okay, so that turned out to be the wrong idea. But anyway, let's move on. Forensic investigation. Okay, through all the investigations, fire investigation, and insurance people, and fire personnel, and experienced people who investigate fires as a full-time job, they determined that the fire started from a defective refrigerator electrical insulation at the 4th floor, and then spread throughout the entire building. Okay, so the image here is showing the specific unit where the fire started. So can you imagine, with the technology, they're able to pinpoint the exact unit where the fire started, and what the cause of the fire was. Now, normally you have a electrical issue in one unit, and there's a fire. Normally the fire is contained to that one unit, or it may spread to other nearby units. But by that time, the fire department got notified, and supposedly the fire gets put out, right? This building did not have any fire sprinklers, so that exacerbated the entire problem also. So why did the fire spread through other floors? Well, let's talk about that. So as I mentioned, bad design, poor design, bad fire escape protocol, and the wrong cladding system. The cladding system is that aluminum cladding that I talked to you about. And if you can see the image that I have here, if you look at the left, okay, the cladding is actually a system where they have a core in the middle, and they have the aluminum cladding on the outside, So it becomes like a sandwich. Okay? And you have that cladding, which actually acts like, sort of like a plywood, for lack of a better term, uh, attached to the building wall, okay, the existing wall. The problem is when they attached it, um, there was airflow. Okay, it wasn't um, complete, cut off. So you have this whole cladding throughout the entire tower on the outside of the building, and you have airflow, going between the cladding and the wall. And then also the inside of the cladding was a material that was combustible. So you have a material that would catch on fire, and then you have airflow. Okay, so you combine these two together, and that's how the fire spread. There was a cavity about 2 inches, and it's supposed to be insulation, but when that insulation starts burning and the air rushing through that gap, it actually increased the intensity of the fire. So if you have like one area burning and somebody, fanning the fire, that's exactly what happened on this building. So, when you go camping and you have a small campfire that you're trying to light and then you fan it, giving more oxygen. That's exactly the principle that happened on this building. So how did the fire spread? Well, that cladding was flammable, and the insulation actually caught on fire and spread throughout the whole exterior of the building. So if you look at the image on the right, okay, um, how the fire spread, it started at the 4th floor, and it just like went up real fast all the way to almost the top of the floor and the roof in a short matter of time. And so my thinking is that if the building did not have the cladding, you wouldn't have this much of a fire spread throughout the building. Because what happens is, people had their windows open maybe, and then the fire's on the outside of the building and it catches the drape on fire, and next thing you know, everything's on fire. So that's why I'm saying that the design was bad, the materials were bad, the fire escape protocol was not that good. So there's very major lawsuits in 2009, 2 years after the fire. Multiple families sued um, U.S. cladding and refrigerator manufacturer, and these were French subsidiaries. Now, why is the U.S. involved in London fire? It's because the materials were manufactured in the United States. Okay, so now you have cross country lawsuits and everybody's dragged in. Okay, so that's another reason why it actually affects United States also. So the word is that you got to be sure, of the design and fight. Now, most people, when they go and rent an apartment or they buy a condo, they ask about amenities like swimming pool and um, a park area, and whether the building has a fitness center, and all these things are nice. How many parking? But rarely is the question asked, how many fire exits does a building have? How many elevators does it have? What is a building's protocol whenever there's a fire? Are they in compliance? So not only in the United States, and I know there's people attending this webinar that are from different countries. The same the same questions to ask, no matter what country you're in, right? Where's the fire escapes? How many do they have in the building? Okay, what's the protocol for emergency evacuation? Does a building have proper signage? If you go on any floor of a high-rise building and you're not familiar, is there a sign somewhere that says in the emergency, here's where to go to evacuate? Is there a sign that points to the emergency exits? Is the emergency exits lighted up? Okay. Are there signs on each floor, lit signs that are lighted? Let's say there's a power outage. Can you still see where the emergency signages are? When you open that door to the fire escape, is the light going to be on? Or is your building so old where there's no emergency generator and it's all dark in there? So these are life safety issues. Now, unfortunately, for the people that passed away in this building, they didn't have the luxury of asking those questions. And then worse yet, they were taught to stay in your unit. But the problem is the fire spread so fast, these people stayed in their unit, they actually burnt to death, right? And that's not a good thing. Now, had they given the ability to evacuate, they would have been, outside the building. So that's kind of my gripes on this thing. And if you're even if you're from a foreign country, there's an association regarding fire protection. In the United States, there's a National Fire Protection Association, which I correspond with on trying to get more information on fire sprinklers and fire alarm systems and life safety systems and those kind of things. Now, if you're from Hawaii, we had a major high-rise fire in a building called Marco Polo. 5 people died. Okay, 5. On this Grenfell tower, 72 people died. So, I mean, there's a difference in the amount of deaths that occurred. So basically, that's kind of the gist of the story on this Grenfell tower. And the reason why we did this webinar is we had requests from people who attended our webinars before, and I kind of was hesitant to talk about it because it's a kind of a negative, depressing subject, and it was not any subject in the United States or in Hawaii. But I decided to do it so that the word can get out. If we can help one person be safe and not get injured, that's the whole idea. That's why we give webinars on building safety, and I'm near the end of finishing my book on building safety. If you're interested, let us know. Even if you're not from the United States, if you're interested in the book, we'll email you the ebook for free. Okay. If you don't want it free, you can go to Amazon and either pay for the ebook or pay for the paperback book. But we like to help. If we can give stuff away, we'll do that. Let's see what else I have. I think I'm at the end of the webinar. Okay, so conclusion from the building expert. I basically gave you my thoughts on fire safety, life safety, and things like that. If you're in a high-rise building that does not have fire sprinklers, I would urge you to see what you can do about talking to your condo board or your apartment building owner about installing fire sprinkler systems, or if not, upgrade your fire alarm system. Okay, there's certain life safety components that is real critical in the event of a fire. And most people think that there's nothing going to be wrong with their building, but you never know when a fire can occur. Okay, from different things. It could be unattended fire where someone's cooking. It could be an electrical fire where you really didn't expect it. Okay, so if your building is like 35 years, 40 years or older, and you never had any electrical inspection done in your building or upgrade of your fire alarm system, I would highly urge you to, um, take whatever action you need to get that done. The other thing is that electrical and electricity may cause a fire. And that's kind of a known thing. But there's also other ways that fires start, from somebody smoking or a lit candle that falls down and starts burning things, or someone cooking and they happen to leave for a minute, and next thing you know, your whole kitchen's on fire. Okay, so there's different ways to prevent a fire, and there's some ways where you can't prevent a fire because you don't know what's going on. Okay, there could be a spark or a short circuit where you didn't expect it. So you never know when a fire is going to occur, but you can take necessary steps to do what you can to prevent a fire. And then if there is a fire, you want to make sure that the occupants in the building can properly evacuate. They're not going to get confused. They're not going to get trapped and things like that. So basically, that's the conclusion. Now, what you missed, we gave previous webinars in our Ask Building Expert series that is not pertaining to any building in London or any building around the world, but mainly concentrated on Hawaii and the United States. So we've given building code, contractor licensing, roofing, concrete spalling repair, plumbing, electrical. We've given probably maybe close to 100 webinars already. And so if you go to our website, we have our webinars on demand that you can watch anytime you want. You don't need a Netflix account or anything, and just select the ones you want and watch it, and hopefully you can learn from it. That's why we do this. So what's coming up? We have webinars coming up next month and the following month about hazardous building materials, problems in the construction industry, which is mainly in the United States. Hazardous building materials apply to anywhere in the world. And then we have construction inspections. We have special inspections, which is different from construction inspections. And then we have defective building materials that actually apply to anywhere in the world. So you're welcome to sign up for those. Go to our website and sign up, and you get a Zoom link, and you can attend. So I'm going to go into the Q&A. So you got questions, I got answers. This is Lance Luke, phone number 808-422-2132. You can call that number even if you're calling from London. My email is lanceluke@hawaiibuildingexpert.com. And I forgot to post our website. Our website link is askbuildingexpert.now.site. And keep that on file. There's a load of information on that website. As I mentioned, there's previous webinars. You got some free books you can download. We got a bunch of websites you're free to visit, and some articles I wrote and all that. So it's a pretty extensive website. We actually work on that website probably 3-4 times a day, just updating. So it's kind of a major effort. And Martin actually takes credit for all that. He does a lot of back end work and things like that. So speaking of Martin, I want to turn it over to him, see if we have any questions that came up or comments. And once again, thank you for attending. I know it's kind of a dreary subject matter, but I think we can all learn a lot from even negative type news. So Martin, are you around?
Yes, Lance, I'm here. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me stop the screen share since I don't have my website.
No problem. But if I can just make a comment, what you just shared is actually valuable for anybody listening on here. And also what I realized when you were talking about, especially the life safety things, checking, because I mean, Hawaii is a traveling community. We all like to travel places. You and I, we like to travel all over the world. And one of the things that I learned, and you just repeated it, was it's important when you're in high rises, hotel buildings, when you get there to check those things that you mentioned, the exits and all that kind of stuff, because you don't know when there's going to be an emergency like that. And my wife and I really learned that kind of firsthand when we were traveling. I forget where we were, but there was like, one of those emergency fire alarm kind of test or whatever. And you needed to know, how to get out of the hotel. I think it was not that huge a hotel, but now one of our standard things whenever we travel, because most times you stay in a hotel someplace, when you go travel, and you need to do the things like you said, know where the fire exits are, how to get to them, because you don't know when there might be one of these emergency things. Luckily, ours was just kind of like a test. Something went wrong in the hotel, and so the fire alarm went off, and so we had to exit. But we all travel, we all do that, and it's such an important thing to know, especially when you have your family with you, to know if an emergency like that happens. You need to know how to escape and get out of there. So you reminded me of that when you were talking about this particular condo fire, but it's something that we all need to be aware of whenever we're in a high rise, whether we live in it or we're visiting someplace. So I just wanted to share that with you. It just kind of made me remember that. So I appreciate that part of this. But
no, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up because I do the same thing. Whenever we check into hotels, we go to our floor and I'm looking for the signage and the map and everything.
that's right.
I just do it by habit. And then on the cruise ships, the last cruise that I went on, it was the biggest cruise ship in the world. It was 8,600 passengers, and it's mandatory that you attend. I forget what you call it, but it was like mainly fire evacuation, what to do in the event of a fire. And the cruise ship was so big, everywhere you went, they have these long corridors, and they got so many signs telling you where to go in case of an evacuation, even by the elevators and all that. But one thing that I want people to know is if there's a fire in a high-rise building and someone pulls the fire alarm station, what happens is in most of the newer buildings, the elevators are coded to lock. They go all the way to the ground floor and it's locked. You can't use it. So a lot of times when there's a fire or fire alarm, people can't evacuate using the elevators. They have to use the emergency stairway. One of the reasons is that the elevators go down to the ground floor is for the fire department to, when they come in, they're going to use the elevator to get up. Of course, they're going to use the stairs too, but don't think that you're going to use the elevator to evacuate. The elevators may not be working. Okay, so just like to throw that out there. So we
Oh,
have
you're right.
any
You're right.
interesting questions that came up?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's one, it's kind of like a question comment on Facebook. And it says, why there were no upgrades or proper sprinkler systems installed. And this was related to this Grenfell Tower. And it is very tragic indeed. So it's kind of like a comment question, yeah, about the sprinkler system. I think you mentioned something about that. It wasn't maybe what, not required or something?
Oh, okay, yeah. Actually, the world, including the United States, is way behind on fire sprinkler mandates. In fact, in Hawaii, because of the Marco Polo fire, that triggered the mandate for these high-rise buildings to install fire sprinklers. Okay, so that was a mandate, and then the mandate got watered down. So basically, if your building was a high-rise building, it was built years ago, you're grandfathered in. You don't need fire sprinklers. But the mandate threw that grandfather clause out and said, we don't care if your building was built in 1960. We're telling you now that you need to either install fire sprinklers or you need to opt out. And if you opt out, you're going to have to upgrade your fire alarm system and do this and do that, proper signage and everything. So it's becoming more strict, and that's in Hawaii. Now, in other parts of the United States, it's the same thing. In New York, Chicago, LA, they have the also the mandate. So what they're trying to do is get these older buildings up to par and make it safer, rather than saying, well, the building was built 40 or 50 years ago, the grandfathered in, let's not force them to, spend more money and upgrade things. Now, I'm going to digress a little. The Florida building that collapsed about a year ago or so, there's no mandate for structural inspections in many parts of the United States and throughout the world. And in Florida, in that particular Surfside area near Miami, there was actually a mandate, by the government. And the mandate was when your building is built, you have to have a structural inspection no more than 40 years. So it's a 40-year certification. Now, as you know, the building can have many problems within a 10-year span, 20-year span. Waiting 40 years is ridiculous. So, I mean, I think that was a compromise between not having any inspections at all. But there's many parts of the United States that have no mandatory inspection. In Hawaii, we have no mandatory building inspection. After the building is built, no city inspector needs to go to the building ever again, right? Now, the only inspection that's required is basically an elevator inspection, which is a state entity and not a city and county. And only if there's complaints, somebody's complaining about, well, I have concrete spalling, looks like it's going to fall off, and they call the city, only then will the city inspector go out and look. They're not roving around like detectives looking at every building. They don't have time for that. So that was just a little digression just to explain the inspection protocol and all that.
Okay, thank you, Lance. Do have a few questions here that I should pass on to you. It says, this person says, I live in a condo high-rise building. How can I be sure that the building is safe in the event of a fire? I don't trust the board or property managers.
Okay, well, one thing you can do is you can request your management company or the board to contact the fire department and have them come out and do an inspection. Or you can ask, when was the last time the fire department came to a building and did an inspection? Or you can call up yourself and request information and talk to them and tell them, hey, I, kind of don't know if the board or the management company is really on top of things. So can you help? Can you check? When was the last time you guys came out? Can you actually give us tips on evacuation? Can you review our building evacuation policy and tell us whether it's good or you have any other recommendations you can give us? So you want to be more proactive, or attend board meetings and then maybe bring up the subject and say, you know what, I'm concerned. I would volunteer. I would be a volunteer to be the chair of our life safety committee, even if they don't have one. Saying, can you guys think about having one, and I'll be the chair of fire protection committee or whatever you want to call it. But you could be more proactive, and you need, if you're really concerned, you need to be the squeaky wheel and just keep hounding them. Attend every board meeting and bring the same subject up. Send letters to the board and to the management company. Research, do your research on high-rise evacuation procedures and all that, and send copies of the articles to your board and management company. The more you do that, the more they're going to go, you know what, we either agree, or we're so sick and tired of hearing this person complain that we're going to do something about it. So if you need help, contact us and we'll give you more ideas. So that's a good subject you brought up.
Thank you, Lance. I just triggered a quick question. So then there's no requirement to have a fire safety inspect. I thought sometimes I see, the fire inspectors inside businesses and stuff checking things, but it's not a requirement necessarily. It's an optional thing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me clarify. There's no building inspection by the building department, DPP, the city building department. There is a mandatory inspection by the fire department, and I think it's every 2 years or so, and they may be behind now, but it is mandatory for the fire department to come to the building. And because there's new people at the station all the time, so they got to drive their truck over there. They got to be familiar with how things work, how to get in the building, what to do, how to lock down the elevator, how to use the elevator, where the stairs are, where the annunciator panel is. That's a panel that would have all these lights, and then whoever pulled, what floor, then the light would illuminate. So if they get a call, somebody pulled the fire alarm, they go out there, and that, let's say they're on floor 17, the fire personnel would know that floor 17 lights blinking, and that's what happened. So chances are, there's a fire on that floor or nearby. So it is mandatory. I'm not sure whether it's 2 years or 3 years. I thought it was 2 years the last time I checked, but we can check and let you guys know if you need more information.
Okay, thanks, Lance. Next question we have here is, my building is 60 years old and has never had any upgrades on the fire alarm or electrical system. Should I be worried?
I would be worried, because your electrical system and your fire alarm system, it does not last forever. So if you look at the lifespan, and I'm assuming that you live in a condo. If you live in a condo, you would go to the reserve study and look to see what the lifespan would be of these components. And if the reserve study was properly completed by a certified reserve study professional, then it should be pretty accurate. So electrical and fire alarm system, I mean, you're at the 35, 40 year mark. Anything over that is is questionable. So if you're in a building like it's 60 years old and you never had anybody inspect your electrical system, you're like 20 years overdue. And your fire alarm system is just as important. A lot of times it's like if you don't see it, then kind of ignore it, or if it's working, then it's not a big deal. But these are not components where you're going to wait for it to fail. These are components where you need to catch it before it fails, because if it fails, it's too late already. So for instance, if your fire alarm system is old and you have a fire in your building and someone pulls a pull station and all of a sudden the bells don't ring and don't work, then what happens? It's too late then. You want to have it tested and working. Okay. And a lot of times condo boards, they don't have money. So they go, well, we haven't had any problem with electrical, so let's just extend that line item another 10 years on the reserve study. And then what happens is you have a component that would last 40 years, and now on the reserve study it's extended 60 years. And then you keep doing that, and eventually you're like, well, wait a minute, we're doing a disservice. So it's not about money, it's about saving people's lives here. And electrical and your fire alarm system are very important components in a high-rise building.
Very good, Lance. Thank you. Next question, I might get back to what you mentioned about the Florida situation. Does Honolulu have a mandatory building inspection program like in Surfside, Florida?
The answer is no. There's no such mandatory building inspection. I tried to get a bill introduced regarding a mandatory building inspection, but it got shot down. And it got shot down by the professionals in the property management industry and condo boards. And the reason is they didn't want to spend the money, it cost too much. So it became a money issue over a safety issue. The only mandatory inspection now is a fire life safety inspection on older high-rise buildings. And that's mandatory. But other than that, there's no structural inspection for concrete spalling or corroded railing or bad electrical or old fire alarm system or anything. So it's kind of like a policy where, oh, we don't need a mandatory inspection because every building is going to monitor their own building and monitor their own components and do their own inspections. It's like how can you have self-monitoring when historically, if I did a survey today, most of these buildings didn't get inspections done. So a self-monitoring, self-governance does not work in a condo situation because most of these people aren't doing it. Now you might say, yeah, but we have reserve studies done. Yeah, but a reserve study is not an inspection, not a detailed inspection per se of these components. A reserve study professional is not going to be bringing out their $10,000 worth of electrical testing equipment and test your electrical. They're not going to test your fire alarm system. They're only going to look at when you last had it upgraded and then plug in the numbers, like failing cast iron piping or spalling. They're not inspecting like an inspector. They're inspecting only for the reserve study purposes. So there's a big difference there.
Oh, very good, Lance. That's a good background on those reserve studies. Yeah. Let's see. Next question is: does the U.S. building code differ from the European building code? I guess we're getting back to Grenfell.
Yeah. There's a difference, and I'm very familiar with the United States building code, the International Building Code (IBC) and the IRC International Residential Code, and then there's other codes. I'm not too familiar with the European building codes, although I've read sections, and for the most part, the comparison of the codes are basically similar. And there's fine tuning here and there that are different, but in general, it's basically similar. So certain things may be different in specificity, but in general, it's pretty much similar. Like the fire code, the building code. So it's not that much difference, but I it's not exactly the same. Yeah, and I know in the U.S. the building codes change every 3 years. I'm not sure what that time frame is in the UK or not, but I don't specialize in UK building codes or uh, building codes in China or India. But I do know that I did research in the building codes in Hong Kong, and like they were like way lax. So some foreign countries are really lax with the building code. So I know United States tries to keep up and make it as safe as possible. But of course, anytime you do that, it increased the cost of construction. So it's like a double-edged sword.
Okay, thanks, Lance. You're triggering other questions on my side. So if I can ask this one, you mentioned that there's like the US building code and we were comparing to European. And then you also mentioned something about an international building code. So does that code, is that required for all these other different country codes that they got to meet the international one, or how does that all work?
That yeah, that title is confusing. Okay, so it's called the International Building Code, but it only applies to the United States.
Oh,
It doesn't apply to any other country. I'm not aware of any country that adopted the United States code, but it's just a term that they use. I
okay.
guess it should have been called the National Building Code, but I don't know why they called it the International Building
Oh,
Code.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that makes sense. That's why I thought, oh, we got this international one that I would think everybody would try to comply with, but it's actually our national. We just like everything else, we make our stuff international. So
Well, there's no worldwide building code, but I thought about this, and because of, and I'm digressing a little here, because of the urge to go into space and have space stations and build communities in space, even maybe on the moon or on Mars or another planet, there's going to be a not international building code. I don't know what you call it. There's going to be a building code that governs buildings in space, on
that'll be
another
the
planet or space station. But
that'll be the intergalactic building code.
yeah, I mean, maybe you got to look under Star Trek or Star Wars or something. But um, that's going to be interesting. That's like a whole another discussion there.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay, I didn't mean to digress, but it was just kind of a curiosity question. Okay, and then we have one last question here, and it is: are you aware of any Hawaii lawsuits resulting from unsafe buildings?
Yes, there's actually a whole bunch. Um, if you okay, so Marco Polo, there was a lawsuit because of the fire, but was it because of an unsafe building or not, or was because of something else? Okay, now there's allegations that um, components in the building were not up to code or up to par. So um, you could put that on the list. There's another Ala Moana shopping center where they had a corroded railing, and they had two guys fall off. The railing had collapsed and they fell. One person died and the other seriously, permanently injured. And so that was another lawsuit. I actually was an expert witness on that lawsuit. And there are others where certain parts of a building, apartment building collapse or a condo, and that there was litigation on that. So, and I'm still working on a couple litigation cases now as an expert where there was failure of certain things in the building that caused problems. So yes, and there's going to be more as time goes on. That's why the objective today is, get your buildings fixed up and maintain it. Because if you don't, even if you're not in a condo, right? If you're an apartment owner and you sort of neglect certain things, the tenant can file a lawsuit against you for not keeping the building maintained or not fixing things in their unit. So it doesn't have to be only a condo. And then the other thing too is if you're a shopping center or you're in an office building or a hotel or a golf course, your employees could get hurt, or anybody, a visitor that comes to the building. And if something's not safe and they slip and fall, they can sue, right? So, and that's why there's these premises liability lawsuits, slip and fall, trip and fall situations. And it's crazy. People can sue for anything at any time, okay? So the key is whether the causation of the lawsuit is valid, whether they actually can prove that they got hurt because of either that component did not conform to the building code, or it was unsafe, it was not repaired. For example, if you're in a parking lot and there's potholes and you happen to trip and fall, is that like, oh, well, everybody has potholes, so next time, watch where you're walking? No, that's not the case. That's a case of neglect and lack of maintenance, poor maintenance. So that's just a example. Or you're a hotel and you have these walkways and tree roots start lifting the walkways, and now it's uneven. And a tourist on vacation trips and falls and conks their head. Is the hotel liable? Should they have known about that condition and fixed it? The answer is yes. They should have known about the condition and they should have fixed it, knowing that there's a lot of tourists that are going to be in that area. So just be aware. And I know, we're kind of going all over the place, but I'm just trying to drive the point home that if you're a building owner, a property manager, a board member, please maintain your property and keep it safe, because you don't want lawsuits. It just creates more problems. So, hey, Marta, we got any other comments on Facebook or questions on the Zoom before we sign off?
No, it looks like we've covered them all. And like you say, safety first. That's kind of got to be the focus. Keep yourself and everybody else safe. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So on behalf of Martin and myself, askbuildingexpert.now.site, we thank you for tuning in, and hopefully you learned something about this high-rise fire in London. And thank you, folks who are tuning in from the UK and other parts of the world. I know you spent some time with us, and we appreciate that. It's time for you to go to bed now, and it's time for us to sign off. So thank you for attending. We'll see you at the next one. Aloha.